Hello everyone. In this video, I wanted to sort of contribute to the discussion that I seen on Tim Mohn's podcast, the Liberty Experts podcast. They were talking about the idea of a philosopher-king, and it's this episode in particular. You guys should all check it out. And I had recently gone through Hoppe's book, which Mohan referenced in the podcast, but I wanted to provide particular excerpts from the book that is perhaps interesting to the discussion, and see what we can get from it, what we can acquire from it. So this man is Hans Hermann Hoppe, one of the most respected Austrian economist scholars that is still alive today, and if I'm not mistaken, he resides in Turkey. And this book in particular, one of my favorite books, and you guys should definitely add to your reading list. Democracy, the God That Failed. This is if you want to consider a critical perspective of democracy and how even a monarchy could in some ways be advantageous. Do take this book into consideration. So now I go ahead and present to you the two quotes that comes from this book, but these are references, or these are block quotes that Hoppe has provided in his book that he's acquired from other books. So here's the first one. So it's a little long, and I got some of it bolded as I think it pertains to the discussion here. And I will just read it here. There are always a few, better endowed than others, who feel the weight of the yoke and cannot restrain themselves from attempting to shake it off. These are the men who never become tamed under subjection, and who always, like Ulysses on land and sea, constantly seeking the smoke of his chimney, cannot prevent themselves from peering about for their natural privileges, and from remembering their ancestors and their former ways. These are in fact the men who, possessed of clear minds and far-sighted spirit, are not satisfied, like the brutish mass, to see only what is at their feet, but rather look about them, behind and before, and even recall the things of the past in order to judge those of the future, and compare both with their present condition. These are the ones who, having good minds of their own, have further trained them by study and learning. Even if liberty had entirely perished from the earth, such men would invent it. For them, slavery has no satisfaction, no matter how well disguised. This is a quote from Etienne de la Boete, butchering his name, but it's on page 93 of Hoppe's book. So, and here's a picture of the book if you guys wanted to consider purchasing. I guess this one is by the Mises Institute, published by the Mises Institute, and I'm certainly hoping to get it maybe next year. And here's the next quote, also pertinent to the discussion. A little longer, but bear with me here. A lot to take away here. In a sound society, leadership, responsibility, and exemplary defense of society's guiding norms and values must be the exalted duty and unchallengeable right of a minority that forms and is willingly and respectfully recognized as the apex of a social pyramid, hierarchically structured by performance. Mass society must be counteracted by individual leadership, not on the part of original geniuses or eccentrics or will-o'-the-wisp intellectuals, but on the contrary, on the part of the people with the courage to reject eccentric novelty for the sake of the old truths, which Goethe admonishes us to hold on to, and for the sake of historically proven, indestructible, and simple human values. In other words, we need the leadership of the ascetics of civilization, secularized saints as it were, who in our age occupy a place which must not for long remain vacant at any time and in any society. That is what those have in mind who say that the revolt of the masses must be countered by another revolt, the revolt of the elite. What we need is true nobilitas naturalis. No era can do without it, least of all ours. When so much is shaking and crumbling away, we need a natural nobility, whose authority is, fortunately, readily accepted by all men. An elite deriving its title solely from supreme performance and peerless moral example, and invested with the moral dignity of such a life. Only a few, from every stratum of society, can ascend into this thin layer of natural nobility. The way to it is an exemplary and slowly maturing life of dedicated endeavor on behalf of all, unimpeachable integrity, constant restraint of our common greed, proven soundness of truth and law, and generally the highest example. This is how the few, carried upward by the trust of the people, gradually attain to a position above the classes, interests, passions, wickedness, and foolishness of men, and finally become the nation's conscious. To belong to this group of moral aristocrats should be the highest and most desirable aim, next to which all the other triumphs of life are pale and insipid. No free society, least of all ours, which threatens to degenerate into mass society, can subsist without such a class of censors. The continued existence of our free world will ultimately depend on whether our age can produce a sufficient number of such aristocrats of public spirit. That's a quote by Wilhelm Röpke. And now, both these quotes, as you can tell, they're describing a group of people and not a single person. And if I'm not mistaken, that's also how Plato talked about it in his text Republic. It wasn't a single king, but like a class of people who have the symbolic gold embedded into their soul that makes them of a more grand status compared to everyone else, right? According to the myth of the metals. So this book, A Humane Economy, definitely interesting, and this is certainly a good quote. But now let's try to take what we can get from these two quotes. Try to see how they could be applied to a theoretical laissez-faire society, free society, and a libertarian society. You know, who could these individuals be for us as libertarians? So here I present to you the 5 individuals that are still alive today, who, if they took leadership of our society, I don't think we libertarians would be opposed to that. So check it out. Walter Block, David Gordon, Thomas Woods, Ron Paul, and let's include Hoppe in there as well. Right? Let's call them. I mean, there are, of course, many other individuals that haven't included here, but just for the sake of presenting this point, take these 5. So we could consider them the Libertarian 5 or the Libertarian Politburo, as in the communist countries. I know that has a odd connotation, but there's a fundamental difference between Politburo in this sense and Politburo in the way communists have been organized. in that in that these individuals, all they're intended to do is supervise the the consistent application of the immutable laws, and that law should not exceed a page, should remain constant. And I would make the case that in a free society, the law should not even exceed a single page. But yet, any country you look at, it's piles of legislation, right? So what really needs to be outlawed, what really is the one of the core problems of any society, including Politburo or parliamentary systems, is the constant piling of legislation. So if you outlaw legislation and all you have are the immutable laws, based on the natural rights of men and women, then all you then what you are basically what you basically got then is these individuals interpreting that law and nothing more. So the difference of them to a communist politburo is that the communist politburo, let's say every month they come up with three new legislation or three new decrees, and those come to be imposed upon society, right? Of course, for or against their will, without consent. But in this case, what they're basically doing, it, these five people, as they sit over society in their throne, and as various issues, economic, social issues, emerge, from in this region or that part of the country or society, they basically they basically can tell us how the immutable laws facilitates how that issue could be resolved without the need for state intervention. So their position is not more is not so the case of being bureaucrats, of legislators, and so forth, but rather this one. Now, I know this may be an odd reference, but is the king of Saudi Arabia's one of his particular positions that is somewhat relevant to what I'm trying to present as my case here. That is, as you can see, I got highlighted here. Other than being the king of Saudi Arabia, he's also the custodian of the two holy mosques. So that's what we need for our free society: a politburo of five, libertarian scholars, and what their position is, not kings, but rather custodians of the law. And that's it. That's it. And that's so I want you guys to consider what you think about that idea, and whether the idea of philosopher kings, a group of elites sitting in a class above everyone else, perhaps directing the night watchman state, as I say, which is also a theoretical model, right? Same as the anarcho-capitalist society, and also this is just an addition to those that have already been detailed in other books and presentations. Yeah, hopefully this was an interesting case that I made. But to close off, and just to take something away from this contribution to this discussion. Oh, my bad. is I wanted to share another quote from that Hoppe provides in his book. This is a footnote on page 103, and he quotes John Randolph of Roanoke, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, where he basically says, "I'm an aristocrat. I love liberty. I hate equality." Well, hopefully that was an intriguing proposition, and perhaps that was contribution to the discussion in some way. And as we try to complete and further advance and progress with our theoretical models, but also for the sake of contrasting that with how we have it in our current lives, and that's actually that's the case that Hoppe makes in his book. He says the point of theorizing about this free society, about this laissez-faire society, is so that could serve as the as the standard of measurement to how we have it. Yeah, I forget the exact word, but to basically to sketch out the contrast between what a free society could look like and how our society is deficient in comparison to it. So hopefully there was something to take away in this presentation, and we will continue to proceed with this discussion and see what more we can derive and learn. Thanks for hearing me out. Like, share, subscribe.